Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome everybody to our council meeting tonight. It's nice to see a full house. It's likely the first time this year that we've been full, so thank you for coming, and we are going to get started. So tonight, reporting out of the closed, moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, second by Councillor Podnovitz, that the council receive the closed session report regarding personal information about an unidentified individual, and further that council approve the confidential direction to staff. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. So moving into the agenda, the minutes of our previous meeting, moved by Councillor Zimmerman, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, that the minutes of the town of Minto, January 10th, 2023, closed session meeting, and January 10th, 2023, regular council meeting be approved. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Resolution moving council into a committee of adjustment, moved by Councillor Potsnovitz, seconded by Councillor Elliott, that the town of Minto council convenes into committee of the whole. All in favor of that? Thank you. That's carried. So we have okay, so we're going to move right into the MV 2023-01, the Metzger 475 Low Street in Palmerston. I'm going to be chair of this public meeting, and any decision reached by this committee today cannot be used to set a precedent. Each application considered by the committee is dealt with on its own merits, and no two applications are the same. So the public hearing is to consider minor variance application MV 2023-01, 2609861 Ontario Limited, care of Jeremy Metzger. And I'm going to ask Annaline to fill us in.
Thank you. The property subject, the proposed minor variance application is legally described as Lot 43 west side of Low Street and has been municipally known as 475 Low Street, Palmerston, in the town of Minto. The subject property is approximately 0.25 acres or 0.10 hectares. The purpose and effect of the minor variance application is to provide relief from Section 12.2.1.6, Section 12.2.2.5, and Section 12.2.2.8 of the Town of Minto's Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 0186 as amended. Section 12.2.1.6 and 12.2.2.8 requires a minimum rear yard setback for a single detached dwelling and for a semi-detached dwelling of 7.6 meters, 24.9 feet, whereas 6 meters, 19.7 feet is proposed. Section 12.2.2.5 requires a minimum front yard setback for a semi-detached dwelling of 6 meters, 19.7 feet, whereas 4.5 meters, 14.76 feet is proposed for a portion of the dwelling, not including the garage. Additional relief may be considered at the meeting. The notices were mailed to the property owners within 200 feet or 60 meters of the subject property, as well as the applicable agencies, and posted on the subject property on January 10th, 2023. Reports were received from the town of Minto as well as Wellington County. I have not heard of anyone registered to speak at this meeting.
Okay, so moving right along here, we'll ask our Minto Planning Coordinator, Ashley Sawyer, to give us a report.
Perfect. So good evening. So 475 Low Street is located in a residential neighborhood on the corner of Low and Temple Street in Palmerston. The committee may recall the property previously coming before council regarding a consent application to sever a vacant urban residential lot for the construction of one semi-detached dwelling, which will be 2 units. The retained parcel does have an existing single-family detached dwelling on it. The property is currently zoned as residential R2, so this does permit for a semi-detached dwelling. However, as a condition of the consent, a minor variance is required for setback relief. The proposed rear yards for both the retained lot with the single-family dwelling and the severed lot with the proposed semi is required to be 19.7 feet, or sorry, is proposed to be 19.7 feet, whereas 24.9 feet is required. The proposed front yard setback for the semi-lot, as mentioned, is proposed to be 14.76 feet to the face of the house only. The garage will comply with the minimum 19.7 feet. The applicant has also asked that relief for the retained lot, interior side yard setback, and front yard setback be provided, despite being legal nonconforming. So this can be looked at as more of an administrative task. Wellington County, Wellington Source Water Protection, and Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, as well as town staff, have reviewed the application, and we note no concerns with the requested relief. No neighboring landowners registered to speak to the application prior to this evening, and town staff note that we do have the conditions recommended in the consent that are still standing. With the approval of this minor variance, we have also reiterated the need for a grading, drainage, and servicing plan to be approved. And I'm here if you have any questions.
So Ashley, if you don't mind, we'll wait for questions. We'll ask for the owner or the applicant. I'm not sure if Jeremy is here. And so Scott, do you want to step to the mic, please, and state your name?
Yes, good evening, council. My name is Scott Patterson. I'm with Patterson Planning Consultants representing the property owner. Nothing further to add to the staff report or the presentation done by Ashley this evening. Here in full support of the staff report and recommendation, but if there's any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, then let's, questions. Go ahead, Ed.
Yes,
Sorry,
through you,
Councillor Potnovitz.
through you, Mayor Turton. The building envelope, is it tight to the setbacks that were requested, or is there some flexibility there?
The building envelope shown on the drawing that's on the screen represents the envelope that's results from the setbacks. So the relief, the red line shown on that plan would be the building envelope that's permitted after the variance would be granted. It roughly works out to about a 1,300 square foot envelope for the house for each half.
I think what I was trying to get at is, are the foundation, does it have to be tight? Is it going to be tight to those setbacks, or would there be an opportunity to grant couple inches leeway just so they could, in the relief?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no house plans have been done yet for the property. I'm sure we could work within the building envelope and allow some flexibility if that's a request from this committee.
Other questions? Okay, so if there's no other questions, other questions from the committee? And Scott, Ashley, you guys are finished, complete with your, okay? So the question is, do we,
Through you, Chair Turton, is it okay if I just
yes?
provide a resolution to council to consider? And then we can go from there?
That's
or-
great,
Okay.
yes?
Thank you. I think that maybe I will provide you the resolution that the Town of Minto Committee of Adjustment approves the application by 2609861 Ontario Limited, CO Jeremy Metzger, for property legally described as Lot 43, West Side Low Street, municipally known as 475 Low Street, Palmerston, in the Town of Minto, to provide relief from Section 12.2.1.6 and 12.2.2.8 for a reduced minimum rear yard setback of 6 meters or 19.7 feet. Section 12.2.2.5 for a reduced minimum front yard setback to the portion of the dwelling not including the garage of 4.5 meters, 14.76 feet. Section 12.2.1.3 for a reduced front yard setback of 2.42 meters, 7.94 feet. And Section 12.2.1.4 for a reduced interior side yard setback of 0.61 meters, 2 feet, with the condition that a grading, drainage, and servicing plan is provided to the satisfaction of the town.
Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Seconded, Councillor Zimmerman. Any questions in reference to the motion as it's read? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So anyone wishing to receive a copy of the notice of decision of the Committee of Adjustment in respect to the minor variance application must make a written request to the clerk of the Town of Minto at 5941 Highway 89, Hairston, NOG 1ZO, or by emailing Annaline at thetown.minto.on.ca. I'm going to officially adjourn this public meeting. Thank you very much. And we'll move right into the second public hearing. This one here is MV 2023-02, the Crossroads Life Church. Thank you. 99 Young Street West, Hairston. And I'll call this public meeting to order. Any decision reached by this committee today cannot be used to set a precedent. Each application considered by the committee is dealt with on its own merits, and no two applications are exactly the same. The public hearing is to consider a minor variance application, MV 2023-02, Crossroads World Faith Center. And I will ask our Secretary Treasurer McRobb to give the details.
Thank you, Chair. The property subject to the proposed minor variance application is legally described as Survey Robertson's lots B and C, Northside Robertson Street, lots M and O, P, and part lot Q, Southside Margaret Street, part Lane, part Young Street, and is municipally known as 99 Young Street West in Hairston in the town of Minto. The subject property is approximately 3.6 acres or 1.45 hectares. The purpose and effect of the minor variance application is to provide relief from section 35.24A2 of the town of Minto's comprehensive zoning bylaw 0186 as amended to permit for a reduced rear yard setback for a 1,040 square foot addition to the existing church. Section 35.24A2 requires a minimum rear yard setback of 9.5 meters, 31.2 feet, whereas a 4.27 meter, 14 foot is proposed. Additional relief may be considered at the meeting. The notices were mailed to the property owners within 200 feet or 60 meters of the subject property, as well as the applicable agencies, and posted on the subject property on January 10th, 2023. We received reports from the town of Minto and Wellington County. I have no one registered to speak at this time.
Thank you, Clerk McRobb. I'm going to ask our Wellington Senior Planner, Matthew Daou, to go to the mic, please. State your name and give us your report. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you through you, Chair. Before you today is a minor variance application to provide relief from the minimum rear yard setback. The applicant is proposing to construct a 1,040 square foot addition to an existing church, approximately 14 feet from the rear lot line, whereas the bylaw requires a rear yard setback of 31.2 feet. Town staff have had discussions with the applicant for other alternative locations. However, due to parking constraints as well as operational efficiency, the proposed location is as proposed. I would add, in light of some of the public concerns that have come in, staff have added a number of conditions to address concerns related to privacy as well as some parking constraints as well. And with that said, planning staff have no concerns with the application as the request is minor, meets the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Matthew. We'll move along to our Town of Minto's Planning Coordinator, Ashley Sawyer.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. So just to add on, the purpose of this addition is for 2 accessible washrooms and a service center for refreshments after the church service. The space would also allow for more space for the kids' programs. So we did circulate the application as required in the Planning Act. So Wellington Source Water Protection and Maitland Valley Conservation Authority have both noted no concerns with the requested relief. Town staff have reviewed the proposal, and we are recommending the requested relief be approved with conditions, primarily due to concerns expressed by neighboring landowners. We do want to reiterate that the scope of the minor variance conditions must pertain directly to the scope of the request. And as such, we have informally spoken to some of the neighboring landowners, and we have reviewed their written submissions as well. So parking, so we do note that the existing parking at the property was in accordance with the Town of Hairston bylaw at the time the original zoning bylaw amendment was passed and the use of the church commenced in 1995. At that point, the church actually did exceed what was required with the bylaw, but this expansion falls under the scope of our current bylaw, which requires 1 parking space per 100 square feet. So as such, an additional 11 parking spaces is required to be provided, and town staff have included this as a recommended condition of approval. Regardless of this minor variance or not, this is something that we would be looking for as they review applicable zoning under the building permit submission. The other note of concern that we received is for noise and privacy. So town staff do note that the existing zoning of the property from 1995 does require a planting strip. However, based on noise and privacy concerns noted from neighboring landowners, we are recommending a condition that a solid board fence be constructed on the portion of the church property that abuts residential lot lines. The town does agree with the county that this must be a minimum of 5.9 feet in height. In terms of height, town staff have noted, based on some informal conversations with two neighboring landowners, the height of the structure may be a concern. Town staff are not opposed to including a condition for a one-story height, but given the location of the property, are of the opinion that this may be unnecessary. Ultimately, it is the committee's decision to make it, to include it as a condition or not. So we have also included that this relief would strictly apply to this resident, or to this addition, not to future building of property. And town staff are ultimately recommending the minor variance be approved with the conditions, again, with the heights limitation up to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Is Mr. Finocchio here tonight? Are you interested in enlightening us if you step over to the mic? John? State your name and tell us all about it, if you don't mind.
Yes, I'm Pastor John Finocchio of Crossroads Life Church. And thank you, Mayor Turton and council and community members. It's my privilege to come and share a few thoughts with you tonight. The entire purpose of the expansion is really to allow our children's wing, although it was presented that the washrooms and servery needed expansion, where we are feeling the press is in our children's ministry. So we have more kids than we have room. And we're very delighted to have that problem. But the children are in the second floor of our building currently on that corner of the building. And so the only place that makes sense for us to expand, and we would be happy to try to expand elsewhere, except it just won't work anywhere else. So to move the second floor out to pretty well double our children's area, that's really where we're feeling the pinch. So the first floor, we will enlarge our washrooms and servery area. There will be no entrance, just to make that clear. There will be no public entrance that will be added back there. There will not be more traffic, foot traffic, anything like that. And the second floor will not be as high as the larger portion of our building, which is 3 stories. So it's not going to increase the height of the building overall. It will be no higher than the building on that end is, which is only 2 stories. So just to make it clear, we're very happy to add the parking that we need, and we're very happy to build a fence. And I just want to note that most of the expansion affects the co-op, and then there's a small portion that would come over onto another person's lot. So happy to do whatever we can to mitigate any issues on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John Finocchio. I know that nobody has registered to speak, but we're going to allow speakers tonight. If you don't mind, if there is anybody that wants to talk, then go to the mic and state your name. And I guess possibly the best thing to do is, I'm not sure if we're interested really in what area you're, but I think I know you, Brock, and you're right there at 87 Robertson. That's where you are, right? That it's butting onto your property
Yes,
on the one side. So
on the one side.
go ahead.
So I have heard what has been said earlier. I'm, from my point of view and where I live there, the drainage portion of the, back a few years ago, the church had addressed the problem of drainage. And with this building that they want to put on, they'd be putting it right over top of that drain. Is there considerations for a new drain or something else? Because if it'd be back in the parking lot for the neighbors. Because when the snow gets pushed back there and in the spring, it mostly just runs back into the neighbors' yards. Just looking about, that's one of the things that I'm interested in.
So Brock, why don't you hit us with all your questions and then we'll have them answered one at a time. Is that
Okay, sure, yep. And again, the package that we got didn't show a height of the building. So now it's going to be 2 stories instead of single story, which we'd kind of been led to maybe it was. And presently, there's a fire escape at the back end of the building there. Would it be pushed out to the side and then add to the easement, or would it go out the front or back? Because right now it comes out the side. And I know John had mentioned something about not adding any access or doors or anything to that on there. So another question I had was, would there be a pathway between the fence and the building added, or a sidewalk or anything? But if there was nobody there, that kind of takes that one off the plan. And then, of course, there'd be an increase. My understanding there'd be an increase in attendance, which would also be an increase in noise levels, which would the question would be addressing some type of noise dampening barrier between the neighbors, but that had got mentioned. Snow sometimes gets to be a problem in there, so it gets pushed up against the fence, which happens to be up against my property, and then it's up on top of trees and stuff like that. And I guess when you have as much land as this, is it really needed to go out the back instead of out the front? Because there seems to be a lot of room out the front. What else have I got here? Now, back in the public meeting that was back in 95, all the, everything that was back then, there was a request for 400 people and 75 parking spots. Has the capacity of the building changed at all? Because was that not clarified back then of what it was? And now we're talking about something of only about 250 people?
Okay.
I think that's pretty much my questions at the moment. I think we
Okay.
have some other neighbors that are interested in, have a few questions too.
Brock, thank you. So I suggest that we answer these questions, and are we answering the questions tonight, Ashley, Terry? Okay? So, thank you, Brock.
Okay, thank you. Want this turned on?
So I kept a list. I'm sure you did as well. Who wants to speak on this?
I can start, and then I may defer some to Terry. So the first one I had is in regard to the drainage. So our understanding is that it is a private property and a private drainage concern. That being said, this is something that will be addressed at the building permit stage, not necessarily something that you would include at the minor variance stage. The fire escape, I would say that largely depends on the building plans. Again, this is just dealing with that rear yard setback, not the building as a whole. If they're proposing to comply with the other zoning requirements, then they don't need relief from those other requirements. For noise and privacy, we have included the solid wood fence. Previously, when the zoning was originally passed in 1995, the bylaw reads that a planting strip was to be provided. Hearing the concerns from neighbors today with this minor variance, we can ask for a solid board-on-board fence. That should help mitigate. In terms of snow removal, we're not anticipating that it's going to be impact beyond what is currently there. And then in reference to information missing on the application, again, this is just to do with this rear yard setback. So we're not looking at the building plans for the other zoning compliance. They're saying they're going to meet that. They're just strictly looking at this rear yard setback. Traffic, we do not foresee the addition of the washrooms and the service centers increasing the traffic volume. And in terms of location, as Matt had mentioned, the existing plumbing, from our understanding, runs to the back of that building where the washrooms are currently, that are undersized for their congregation. So that's why they're putting it there, as well as more space for the kids' programs and the existing plumbing and the required parking spaces. If you actually push it out the side of the building or over to the other front where we've heard some suggestions of, you're going to cut into the required parking there. And previously, being that this was a factory, we believe there's likely service lines running under that parking lot already. So I believe I've answered those questions, unless you have anything that I've missed. The capacity of the building is not specified in the zoning bylaw that was passed in 95, and that's probably more to do with the building code as well.
So the only other thing I'd like to add is just with respect to Brock's comment about the fire escape. Because of the travel distance in the second floor of the existing building, they will have to provide a fire escape of some sort to replace the one that the addition is going to be relocated on. So there will have to be something there, but again, it's a fire escape. It's not like a common entrance door or anything like that. The other one I had jotted down was a walkway between the addition and the fence, sorry. I'm not aware that one is being proposed or not proposed. I just don't know the answer to that one. And I think Ashley covered them all off.
So the one that I think, the snow on the snow moving on the trees and the fence, did we talk about that?
So Ashley did touch on that briefly. With this addition, there's not any anticipation that there's going to be additional snow moved to that location beyond what the current practices are. We don't have any bylaws or regulations in place as to where snow can and can't be moved or anything like that. It'd be more of a maintenance thing. With the expense of the fence that we're recommending be included as a condition, the church or the church's contractor will have to pay more attention to pushing that snow because instead of just disrupting some trees and that, there'll be a solid board-on-board fence that they're pushing the snow up against. So from a maintenance perspective, they'll just want to be more cognizant of that.
Brock? You got answers to all your questions? Okay, thank you. Then let's move along to the next speaker. If there's questions that haven't been answered? Okay, thank you.
Carolyn Kuipers, and I was out to the town office at least twice, and I got very vague answers to my questions. I did ask how high this addition would be, and basically I was told one story. Now it's a different story. So you're getting all these plans and stuff for a public meeting, so why can't I get all the information? I also asked whether there was what was on that ceramic floor. One person told me, well, that's where they gather for after the service. Okay, I can accept that. Later, I found out there are washrooms on that ceramic floor. So why was I not told the truth? How can I make an informed decision when you basically don't tell me the truth? And 99 Yonge Street has 3.6 acres. Why do they have to squeeze to the north when they have all this land to the south? And I'm concerned about the drainage too, because I'm at the bottom of the hill. So do I get all the water? Basic, that's my questions.
Thank you, Carolyn. Is there questions there that we haven't answered yet, Terry?
The one I would like to touch on would be the height of the addition. The plans that we received is the one that's up on the screen right now. It didn't indicate a second floor in it. In the institutional zoning, there is no maximum height, and the setback doesn't vary whether it's a single story or two-story. So that was just something that maybe we assumed, being that was the plan that we received, and yeah, possibly could be a second floor addition as Mr. or as John has mentioned. Other than that, I don't know how else I can address the concerns. The plans that we had are the proposed plans, which shows the addition relocation. I wasn't aware, and it really didn't impact the scope of the application in terms of whether there's existing washrooms there on the ceramic floor or not. With the, if there is existing washrooms there, the plumbing would be right there as well. So it would be easy to extend the existing sanitary connection slightly, well, to the outside of the existing building to connect the new washroom. So from a logistical plumbing perspective, it's nice and convenient. And I think the rest of the questions that Carolyn had posed, we had answered previously.
Questions from the committee? Okay, hearing none. I would like to ask Mr. Finocchio, do you have any rebuttal?
At the mic.
Sorry, would you mind just heading to the mic if you don't mind? Thank you. Just pretend you're in the pulpit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I appreciate all the concerns that have been mentioned. And I think the snow issue has been addressed. And the other thing to understand, we did, in our, what we sent over had a page 1 and page 2, and page 2 said upper level. So I don't know if it was fax or if it was delivered by hand, but it was there. Nevertheless, I think what needs to be understood is we are in 2 services now. So we're trying to keep the traffic, by going to 2 services, we're trying to mitigate any problems and try to keep, from everybody being in one service. So the reality is we would never be able to put everybody in one service, certainly not legally anyway. And so we went to 2 services a number of years ago. Sometimes during the summer for a month or so, we might go back to 1 service. But so we've tried to distribute the number of people coming over 2 services so that we don't run out of parking, number 1, and number 2, so that our children's ministries can accommodate all the children that are coming. But we've gotten to a point now, regardless, we need that extra room. So as far as if the fire escape is some kind of an issue, that could be run down behind the building and along the side of the existing building from that 2nd floor, if that would somehow solve somebody's concern. Other than that, yeah, I'm not sure if there's any other concerns that haven't already been addressed. So thank you.
Great, thank you. So hearing no other questions? then- Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Step up to the mic and
It's Tammy Shannon, and Brock had some questions, a couple he missed. On the original application, there's a measurement given, only one measurement. It is 800 square foot on the ground and 14 something on, 15 something. So that's, they missed the beat on our side of it, which is the rear. So with the information that's been provided by the application, the front will go up and over to approximately maybe 30 feet, guys. So the implications for shadowing on the property, if the same is implicated on the back, there is no formal, the sketch is informal. Brock looked at it for quite a while, and it is not at all the way it should be to make a reasonable understanding of it. So the comment that Terry had made about the property measurements that looks like the co-op is going to get more than the Shannons, actually, that measurement has not been determined at this point. There is no evidence of a defined line of exact measurements, and there's no boundaries. So in our world, on the other side of the fence, is the shadowing, is the tree damage that'll be done. After 30 years of putting the trees back, do I have to start over? So the sun rises above the church every morning. Is that going to be changed? That's all I ask.
Thanks, Tammy. Who wants to answer that one?
I will take a stab at it. I'm not sure where the square footage numbers came from. Oh, okay. The other thing in terms of the sun shadowing, the only thing, if you look on the picture that's on the left, partially cut off there, any sun shadowing will be on top of Tammy's shed and trailer. So from an enjoyment of the rear property, I'm not sure if any shadowing that would fall in that area would diminish her enjoyment of her rear yard. I could very well be wrong. I'll let you explain the square footage.
Yeah, so in terms of the square footage on the application, while we do review the application, we do review all materials, and the actual square footage indicated on the site sketch was the 1,040 square feet. In terms of 2 stories, it was our understanding that it was 1 story until the end of last week, when it was determined to us that a 2nd story, they didn't want to lose the opportunity for that. That being said, the application does note to refer to the site sketch, as that is the most accurate, especially when you're looking at a property that's not the standard square shape. It's very hard to fill in all the setbacks when there's multiple side yards, rear yards, that sort of thing. So I don't know if that helps clear it up at all.
Through you, Chair, if you don't mind, if I could just add one point as well, and Terry just sort of echoing what Terry has already outlined, but the institutional zone does not have a maximum height, nor does it have a minimum or maximum floor area. So it's pertaining to this application, it's almost redundant, whether it's 1,200, 10,040. The relief requested does not change, and nor will, town staff's position change as well.
Thank you, Matthew. That's a good point. Okay. John, do you want to speak to that? Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, thank you. Respond to the shadowing. And I am a tree lover. My backyard is full of them. And I absolutely am sincere in what I'm saying. But as the sun rises, it's directly east of our building. So it comes up and it would continue to shine down where the building isn't into that backyard. I think more of a detriment to sun would be a fence, which if there's trees along that side there of that yard that there's a concern about, I think the fence would actually be more of a detriment to sunshine hitting it than our building would be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no other questions by our committee, any other citizens, I'd like to thank you for bringing your issues forward. I hope we've done a good job of addressing them. I hope you've got all of your answers, questions given to your answers, or vice versa. And we're going to move along. If there's no other I'd like to ask our
Thank you.
clerk to,
So at this time, I'm just going to read one, and you can let me know if there's any further conditions that you'd like to see added to it. The decision is to approve the application by Crossroads Word Faith Center for property legally described as Survey Robertson's Lot B and C Northside Robertson Street, lots M and O, P, and part lot Q, Southside Margaret Street, part Lane, part Young Street, municipally known as 99 Young Street West, Harrison, in the town of Minto, to provide relief from section 35.24A2 of the Town of Minto's Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 0186 as amended, to permit for a reduced yard setback of 4.27 meters, 14 feet, with the conditions that the relief only applies to the proposed 1,040-foot addition on the rear of the building. An additional 11 parking spaces be provided for the rear addition, and a solid board fence that is 1.8 meters, 5.9 feet, to be constructed along the shared lot line of 87 Robertson Street and the rear lot lines of 93 Robertson Street and 103 Robertson Street. That's what I have before you. I can
Okay.
add anything else if you wish.
is there any other conditions that we need to put on this resolution? I'm sure John, your group will work with our group, and we've heard all the issues tonight. You've said that there'll be no issues. We'll get this straightened out. I mean, we talked about the snow and the fence and all the other things. So, one more time, Carol?
I'm Carolyn Kuipers. I'm concerned about the propane tanks and oil tanks at the co-op. They're quite close to the building, 99 Young Street. That's another concern.
Okay. So, okay, thank you. I'll get Terry or Ashley just to speak on that. I'm sure we've had that discussion.
So propane tanks, storage locations and all that are regulated under TSSA. With respect to that back building of the co-op, that is where they replace the valves for empty tanks. So there's no live propane tanks that are being stored there. The co-op obviously is well aware that there is the church there. Part of their approval for having a propane facility there is they need a risk management plan that's prepared by an engineer. This addition would be closer, obviously, than the existing. The propane facilities have to be notified of any public meetings, so they would have been circulated this. And it would be under the obligation for them to pass the information on to their engineer to determine whether anything needs to be revised with their risk management plan. So the onus would be on the co-op to address the location of the addition of the church, not the other way around.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to vote on this motion. I've got,
Mover and a seconder
okay,
first.
can I have a mover and a? Yes. Yeah, no problem. So while you're doing that, I'm going to get a mover and a seconder for this motion. Thank you, Councillor Elliott.
Just turn on.
Councillor
Jeff
Todd.
Parker, 103 Robertson. Just
Sorry,
wondering,
one second.
Sorry, Elliot, and then I missed the second one.
Mr. Podnovitz.
Thank you.
Sorry, can we start again?
yeah, sorry. Jeff Parker, 103 Robertson. Just have a question in regards to the fencing. Will there be some discussion between the neighbors of what type of fence will be built? Will we have some input if you have to put it up? Just, it's in your backyard. You don't want to have something that's a bit of an eyesore that you got to look out every day and see? Yeah. No, that was just when they got talking about the fence, I got thinking about that.
Yeah, sure.
At the,
Yep, go to the mic and this will be the last speaker.
The area that we're talking, if I understand right, the fence is going from, like along 87 Robertson, their backyard?
I thought it was along 93 and 103.
So if I may, it will start at the corner of the Co-op and Tammy and Brock's property. So right by the addition, it'll run along their side property line, and then hit the corner of 93 and 87 Robertson, so that red corner on the left, and then we'll follow along the rear yard of both 93 and 103 Robertson, and then we'll stop at your rear corner, Jeff.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was not apprised of that.
So in the condition as read, it is a solid fence. So what the town, and this is for acoustical purposes, is proposing a board-on-board fence. So the boards will abut opposed to be offset like a typical privacy fence. Privacy fence are good for visual, but to actually block and reflect noise, you want that solid connection there. So that is how the condition is put in, or is listed, sorry.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to call the question. All in favor of this motion? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to state that anyone wishing to receive a copy of the notice of decision of the Committee of Adjustment in respect to the minor variance application must make a written request to the clerk of the town of Minto, 5941 Highway 89, Hairston, NOG 10, or by email at annaline@town.minto.on.ca. And I'm going to officially adjourn this public meeting. And we're going to move along, and if you folks want to stay for the rest of our meeting, we'd be honored to have you. But if you want to leave, that's fine as well. So I'll give you a second just to. Yeah, you can go that way, Jeff.
You can go that way.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. No problem. Come back when you can stay longer. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, we're going to move along into the next resolution. It's by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Zimmerman, that the Town of Minto Committee of Adjustment convenes into Committee of the Whole. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. There is no public meetings, but we do have one delegation. We're very lucky tonight to have Luke and Aaron. We're going to talk about the Minto Farmers Market. We always enjoy this positive situation in Palmerston. We appreciate, Luke, you coming to our meeting and letting us know what's going on over there, and Aaron as your assistant, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. Change it up. Anyway, I lead a double life. So I also am a member at the, and on the committee for the Minto Farmers Market. Aaron is really the brains behind the whole operation, so he's been excellent all year, and we're working very much to figure it out. Brought together some slides here, and so just an update from last year's market. Was the first market in the post-COVID era. We kind of ran back to what rules and regulations were back prior to the pandemic. We had a number of new vendors this year, so up a bit, rotating vendors that were not there every week, but often we have 7 full-time vendors that were relatively seasoned. We had a market student, Ella, and she was a great help. She really helped with the setup and takedown, other various tasks around the day, and helped with our coffee. She was great and helped everyone this year. Social media, it's a way for us to get out what's going on for marketing. And what we see there, and our following is growing, which is great. Our main avenues are Instagram and Facebook. It's really is important actually. promotions, there's a various degrees of promotions that we do to promote the market. They're all listed there. They all have their own niche way to help promote the market and draw people out. Are they working well? We kind of go after the season's done, and then leading into the next season, discussing what worked well, what we should carry on with. Part of these promotions are certain events, such as Strawberry Social event, which we put on, the Family Day event that we do construction material on roof, and we also partner with the Palmerston Fair, where we put on a pouring contest. So we try to do an event per month. We go August, September. Two county initiatives we're part of. I haven't signed there yet. Is I guess a couple county initiatives. Market Box, which is the last number of years promotes in the county, if I remember correctly. Full county now. Either way, it is gift cards that are given to certain groups, and then they are produce or goods to the market, insurance, and the vendors back for it. It's been a really good program because it's really brought a lot of people to the market that don't know. So that's great. It's put in the new open the middle package. Is that correct? Less in the past. Oh, well, it used to be. And it was great because new people that moved into town would then say, hey, there's a farmer's market next. And the market trail, which is promotion to the county to try to encourage farmer's market. Two more initiatives, the market box and the holiday box, which are initiated by Eastern County. And what it is, the market box, it features a assortment of goods from each farmer's market throughout the county, and they are for sale and by the county and market themselves. Again this year, and that was great. It's a big bonus to the actual vendors as well as to help September holiday box, which was a conjunction of all the markets together. They were sold. They sold them as well. Great. We have our ongoing winter fundraising event, which is our Palmerston, United Palmerston, and it's held at the Legion again this year. We had great success with our first one. I guess that's the end of the slides. Budgetary wise, we had a successful year. We ended up about $1,000 back, which is great. We do all these events and promotions in line with sorts. So I guess other plans for this year is the market starts on June 3rd. We have approval to get a new sign made up at the entrance to Palmerston. It was put up about 10 years ago. It's pretty outdated, so that's spring. Thanks to council. Thanks to the folks at the Palmerston Heritage Museum because they are gracious to let us get that.
Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
One question I have is all your vendors are there and they're every week. It has been worth their while. They make a bit of money at it, or are they planning on coming back, or are you adding more? I know the crowd's been really good.
Yeah, like to be honest, the crowd's almost grown every year. It seems like, which is great. Sport is not just common, but neighboring. Awesome. Yeah, like honestly, we wouldn't have done this market since it started. This isn't me, Trouble Farm speaking. And yeah, like it's financially worth it. I can't speak for the other vendors, but it's a lot of work going there. So I would think they all, there's financial.
May I say too, you guys are doing a great job over there. It's fun when you get over there. It's enjoyable. You get to meet with people, and I think that's a lot of the social aspect of it. And the fresh produce you get, and I get date squares every week. So, That's great. You guys are doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
Belinda, did you want to say something?
I was just going to add to what Luke had said. Many of the full season vendors have been full season vendors for years. So knowing that, I think those vendors definitely obviously see benefit because they keep coming back. And food is always popular. So the food vendors, I think, are more successful maybe than some artisan vendors that are more of the come and go type vendors.
Other questions? Do you have your hand up, Wes? Oh. Well, thank you, Luke. When I said that your assistant, you're her assistant, I was unclear on that, but Aaron, thank you for working so diligent over there, and Luke, thank you for the report. We appreciate what you're doing. It's great to go over there, and and I agree with Ron. Just enjoy the ambiance. It's nice. So thank you very much. Public question period. Okay, so we have the correspondence received for information, moved by Councillor Dirksen, second by Councillor Valiant, that the council receive the correspondence as information. Is there anything that we want to pull out and discuss? As always, we do respond to letters that are sent in. I'm sure we'll respond to Carolyn's letter. Other than that, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Previous reports. We have no committee minutes. We're moving into staff reports. Ashley's going to talk to us about Bill 109 and Bill 23 update, which seems to be on everybody's agenda these days. So, Ashley, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Turton. So initially, we were proposing on waiting to bring the update to you until we had all of the provincial timelines associated. That being said, those dates haven't been released, so we figured we'd give you a high-level update of where things are currently at. And then I tried to lay out everything in my report with a nice table so you didn't have to read just pages on pages. So I'm going to start with Bill 109. So in April 2022, royal assent was given to Bill 109, and it was introduced by the Ontario government with the intent to create more housing options and accelerate development timelines. Again, to get more homes built. This is something that we hear a lot. Key changes were made to the site plan control and the zoning bylaw amendment processes. For site plan control, as council's aware, the jurisdiction of approving those site plans no longer falls to council. It's delegated to municipal staff. In our case, it is Terry, and in his absence, it's myself and the CAO in conjunction. The mayor and clerk remain the signing authorities for those agreements, though. But one of the key changes, which is why I'm bringing this back before you tonight, is regarding the fee refunds for the site plan control and zoning bylaw amendment applications. There were some newly legislated timelines set out that municipalities have a certain time to either approve for a site plan or make a decision on a zoning amendment. And if you don't make the decision in that time frame that's now legislated, you owe the applicant funds and their refunds for their fees, and they're entitled to that. That being said, the refund of fees does remain a source of concern with municipal staff as the legislation remains unclear. The fee changes were to take effect, which they did, on January 1st, 2023. However, just before Christmas, so December 22nd, we received a letter from the minister saying that he's promising to bump this timeline to July 1st. That being said, as it stands right now, the legislation passed is for January 1st, and we haven't heard anything farther from the province on if this date's getting pushed still. So that covers the Bill 109. So Bill 23 received royal assent on November 28th. and it does make significant changes to the development process in Ontario. Again, to increase housing supply, and as I'm sure you've heard this before, build 1.5 million homes in the next 10 years. It does change 9 pieces of provincial legislation, and several of the amendments did come into effect immediately upon the royal assent. However, many of them come into effect at a date to be determined that we do not know that date yet. So that being said, not all of these changes are going to impact the town, so I didn't want to bore you with the City of Toronto Act and all of that. So I've just kind of highlighted in my report the ones that are going to be most applicable to us. So the first one is Conservation Authorities Act. So as I'm sure you've heard rumblings, Conservation Authorities' powers and the ability to comment on certain development applications are being reduced. That being said, the provincial policy statement does remain clear that they can still comment on natural hazards, which is flooding. So you can still no longer build a house in a floodplain. Conservation authorities can no longer appeal official plans, official plan amendments, zoning bylaws, minor variances, consents, or draft plans of subdivisions unless they are themselves the applicant in the case of a minor variance. And they can also no longer make their own regulations per conservation authority, so they're going to have one regulation apply to every single one of them. There's some additional changes outlined in the report, but I won't bore you with all of it. The Development Charges Act, Gordon and I have been having a lot of fun with this. So many changes are proposed. They're including the addition of exemptions for added units to rental apartments, affordable residential units, attainable housing options, inclusionary housing units, and nonprofits. We are still waiting on the province to define exactly what they're saying affordable is, how agreements for these affordable units will work, including what it means for subsequent sales, and what the prescribed criteria for attainable housing is. Notable changes is also the phasing in of development charge increases over 5 years. Our understanding is that if your bylaw was opened since January 1st, 2022, you're subject to the phase-in rates. We have not done that at the town level, so we're remaining the status quo until our bylaw expires. However, the county opened theirs in June, so they are now subject to the phase-in. They're capping interest rates. We're now required to spend or allocate at least 60% of our DC reserves for water, wastewater, and road services. Again, we're not entirely sure what they're defining allocate as, so that's to come. And DC bylaws will expire every 10 years. Previously, this was every 5. In terms of the Ontario Land Tribunal Act, to put it in simpler terms, they're getting a lot more power and their decisions are made based on their opinion. You'll see the word opinion comes up a lot now. They also do have enhanced ability to award costs for frivolous and vexatious complaints, and they can prioritize certain hearings. In terms of the Planning Act, so as it stood before Bill 23 was passed, and this is one of the ones that came into effect immediately, residential developments that are 10 units or less are now exempt from site plan control. That being said, we used to require it for 4 units or more. Matters related to exterior design, so the character, the scale, the appearance, can no longer be reviewed or commented on at the municipal level. Again, that's enforced as of royal assent. Plans of subdivision, public meetings are no longer required, enforce immediately. Upper tier municipalities, this is coming into force at a date, again, to be determined. Essentially, larger areas, so when you're looking at like Halton, Niagara, Peel, they're losing their approval authority as the upper tier. They're removed from the Planning Act. Minor variances, members of the public, i.e. neighboring landowners, can no longer appeal decisions, enforced effective immediately. Consents, the same thing. So a lot of changes were made to the parkland as well. Essentially, they're just reducing the requirements of what they have to give you and redefining a few terms as well. The one key change is now the owner of the property who's developing it decides the land that will be conveyed to the municipality. Again, this is not yet in effect, but the intent remains that the parkland must be usable. However, it can now include lands subject to an easement or other restrictions and lands encumbered by below-grade infrastructure. Additional residential units. This one does apply to us slightly, and this is, again, something that we're working through, and we'll bring an update to you when we have more. But we were very proactive in Minto, in my opinion, in that we passed the additional residential units bylaw without being forced to. It was something that was recommended before, whereas we did it, but it's now required. So if you have a zoning bylaw or official plan that prohibits that, it's null and void. Essentially, municipalities can no longer do that. So you can have 3 residential units per, and this is the key, urban residential lot. Sorry, something else just to add on the additional units is you can't specify a minimum unit size and you can't require more than 1 parking space per unit. So with all these changes we're seeing, we've been working with the county as well as our neighbors in Mapleton and Wellington North. And we will continue working with them, but we'll be probably looking at another zoning bylaw amendment to get everything up to speed with the new legislation. Yeah, so to wrap it up, I will say it's a piece of legislation that does have some pretty intense goals. Do we think it's going to solve the affordable housing crisis? No. There's a lot of other facets that play into that, but when you look at it on the surface level, it's the start. So I'm here if you have any questions.
Councillor Elliott, go ahead.
So we're gonna lose money out of this, sure, right? Obviously. Have you any estimate what kind of percentage we'll lose out of developmental charges and such like?
Yeah, Councillor Elliott, it's really hard to put a handle on because, as you know, our development's been really up in the last thing. I think part of the change as well, the one that Ashley mentioned, like going to residential units that are 10 and above, we have very few of them. So that's out. Collecting less parkland and all that too. Like in rural Ontario in general, the level of our parkland fees and development charge fees is relatively low. And I think I mentioned like our total parkland reserve is only 39,000. And our development fees for a year ago were $1,086,000, and we allocated 586,000 in the 1 year. I think the other thing is we kind of got to finance this stuff a little more. Like we won't be collecting with all these freezes and all that. And if you remember, just about 2 years ago, they had all the freezes on the rental housing, and that took automatically for qualifying development charges. Instead of collecting it traditionally, we had the building permit. It's over 5 years, like 1/6 right now, and then 5 years that way. So it's more that kind of thing. It's an impairment. It's hard to really quantify, but it's definitely not an increase, and it's a decrease. And you know, the more development that we have, we could collect fees. The more lost revenue, the opportunity cost too. So.
The other thing, just to add to what Gord mentioned and what Ashley mentioned as well, at this point, we can't nail down, based on historical performances in building, how much we'd lose because there's still regulations to be released. They haven't told us what an affordable house is or isn't, and what an attainable house is or isn't. So depending on exactly the wording of that when they roll it out, could have varying impacts on a calculation. So
So a Toronto affordable house is far different than how are you gonna make that decision?
some of the release notes for the affordable house, and again, release notes versus what's in the regulation change. They differ. So an affordable house is a house that's marketed at 80% of the local value. What is that? Is it just a house that's built to minimum code that you can price it lower because you've got less into it? Or that's the tricky part. We don't know what some of these lofty goals actually mean at this point.
And I think to add to that, the one Weirfolds, they gave a presentation on it for the planners, and the thought was, if the house is 80%, so does that make $1 million home that's 800,000 affordable? Right? So we're still waiting on those regs, but.
Other questions? Deputy Mayor Anderson, go ahead.
Just generally, what are your largest concerns in regards to all this, other than the development charge thing, but as you say, attainable, affordable? Define that. Like up here, according to that marketing report we had at Economic Development last year, people working at TG Minto, 2 of them can afford a $300,000 home. That's not attainable, because there aren't any.
So besides the DC components, there's lots of areas of concern that I have, to put it politely. One of the things that we've had a bunch of meetings on, like from a building department standpoint, and from a planning standpoint, is to develop processes to replace the processes that were removed from us. So recently, we amended our building bylaw to enhance grading requirements. That's a knee-jerk reaction to losing control over developments of less than 10 residential units. So again, like that comes from Build 109, so that's build things faster. At the same time, the processes that we lost to replace those slow things down. And the builders and developers are saying exactly the same thing. The other thing that I have concerns about is lack of public process and public input. So we heard tonight, neighbors are concerned about a minor variance. They have no appeal rights to it. So yes, they speak their mind. The town, we can go tell them to pump salt and they can't do anything about it, which I don't think is what a public process is supposed to be. That's definitely not what staff or council's opinion is. We're still gonna take it into consideration when making a decision, but again, I don't like that. The other one that scares me is lack of public meetings for plans of subdivision. So I'm working with a developer in Palmerston who can comply with the current zoning. So the only process they would have to go through is the plan of subdivision, which means the neighbors that abut the property may not know nothing is happening there until the bulldozer shows up one morning. So again, we understand that that's not what Minto's goal is. There's no mandated public meeting, but we can still hold public meetings. So we're still going to get their input just so we know, keep everyone happy, keep everyone informed. So it's interesting.
I would say that this legislation seems set to make enemies or really hard feelings, towns and committees. Like when people who live, and I understand that's why they took us out of the mix, people who live in a rural area presumably chose to live in that rural area because they like having a larger yard and trees on their street and some. They don't want a 6-story high-rise, well, not high-rise, but it would be here, beside them. It changes the whole context of the neighbor and the parking. One parking space, really? And where is everybody gonna go? Because how many people have one car, right? Like, there's just so many issues. It's just layers and layers and layers. And to me, it's just set to make bad neighbors. They're gonna be all annoyed with each other. My other issue is the Conservation Authority. To take them out of the mix, like we've been so focused on this for so long, we talk about protecting our environment, and now it doesn't matter, you can build wherever you want.
So exactly, maybe I'll just answer your questions kind of inversely. I haven't had any official meetings with conservation authorities to see exactly what powers from Minto's perspective they have or haven't lost. So again, it's just a very high-level report because I don't know all the information yet. The reason for the province to remove public meetings from plans of subdivision and that is an attempt to get rid of the whole NIMBYism. So you don't want a 6-story building in your backyard, but the municipality needs the bodies, to fill our jobs. So it's a lovely kind of catch-22.
Sure is.
And the public did lose the appeal rights to plans of subdivision. Having said that, and that's the example I brought up about the one who doesn't need rezoning, public still has appeal mechanisms for rezoning. So if you think of like Galaxy that purchased Dan Sinclair's subdivision, they couldn't touch the red line amendments that are proposed, but they could appeal it through the zoning. So that one, there's a catch, but this other one I'm dealing with could go through. Again, you don't know that anything's happening there until the dozer shows up. So again, we're replacing that process with a different process.
Other questions? Gord, sorry, Gord.
I'm sorry, just a comment. Yeah, as you can tell from Ashley's report and Terry's comments, there's nothing simpler here. Like, there's the unquantifiable cost of dumping a lot of work on the building and planning department, on the finance department, I think on the clerk's department too, because what kind of record keeping? Like, you know, that we got 20-year agreements and all that, and the 7-year retention bylaw. And we used to have like pretty simple, you came in, got your building permit, you paid your development charges, we're done. Oh, got to do that. And there's certain anniversary dates, like when an application is deemed complete, and then that freezes it for 2 years, but if you wait for 3, then it's off. Like, the tracking is going to be incredible. And we're, you know, like, even at our busy stage, we're relatively small. Like, in larger municipalities, it's a job creation thing, like, wow, just tracking it. So, again, is that, you know, it's going to cost 10,000, but it's got to cost something. And we're supposed to turn around quicker, and yet there's more things to do, so.
It's quite mind-boggling.
It
really.
is.
And how it got royal assent, it just sort of, I don't know.
Well, just on that, I would like to note that the commenting period wasn't over.
I know, I know.
The commenting period is over after it read or got royal assent. So it's like, yeah, we want your comments, but too bad.
We've taken the 2, we don't want anymore.
Yep.
We don't like them.
Any other questions? So the timing on the public meeting, Terry, it's not an onerous process. What is it, a month, 30 days?
For plans of subdivision?
So tonight, this public meeting.
Yep.
How long does set the project back from the time, like now we have to, so can you answer that question? You understand my question?
Yes, I think I do. So the requirement to hold a public meeting for a minor variance and rezoning has not changed. Notification timeframes are the same, appeal dates are the same. The only difference is we don't have to listen to neighbors for minor variances. So developers are going to pick up on this and want more minor variances because now the public can't appeal the decision, whether they like it or don't like it. So process time for, minor variants and rezonings are the same. Being a public meeting is not mandatory for plans of subdivision is actually a good thing. Right now, it's usually right before it gets draft approved that it goes out for public meeting. Now we can do it at the initial stage so that we can get the public's input on an informal basis closer to the beginning of the project so things can change before they do all the planning studies and engineering studies and then have to change it after the fact. So that we're being preemptive in holding the informal public meeting or whatever we decide to call it that's a benefit.
And everybody's concerned about this. They really are. But that is a great report, Ashley, Terry, gentlemen. There's a lot of unknowns, and it's a sad situation that really, it wasn't a great part of democracy, for sure. So we have moved by Councillor Zimmerman, second by Councillor Potnovitz, that the Council of Town of Minto receives report PLN 2023-06 regarding Bill 109 and Bill 23 for information. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you very much. We're going to move into this is pretty positive. Dave and Wes, do you guys want to go ahead with our year?
We're the good news part of the meeting.
Thank you. Go ahead, you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you can see from the report, it's 2022 was another record year for the town of Minto for building starts. In permit value as well as a number of permits issued. 247 permits were issued in 2022. The different categories are broken down. You'll notice that there's quite an increase in multifamily dwellings as well as additional dwelling units. That's going to be the future of housing, I think, for the next few years, simply because of cost. You can sell a unit in a townhouse cheaper than you can a single family house. And that's what people are faced with now, is making that. The Canadian dream is no longer going to be a a house with a big backyard and a, double car driveway, it's gonna be a townhouse or an additional dwelling unit or half a semi, just because of price. So I'd just like to point out also those 247 permits, that will probably equate to something on the order of between 9 and 1,100 site inspections for Wes and I to do as they get to completion. So that keeps us busy when we're not doing paperwork in the office, doing plans review and all these applications. You have anything to add for that, Wes?
Not on that. I know on the next page, there's an error. On the first one, it's a single-family dwelling and semis. The 24 and the 33 should be switched. That's my apologies. Yeah. So if we keep on going, we've had this year, the next slide, please, Quinn. So in total, we've had 85 new dwelling units created this year or issued in a permit, and 25 additional dwelling units for a total of 110. And I don't know the number you told me earlier, but we're well above what the county expects of us. Seen a big uptake in this.
Just
Go
to step
ahead,
in,
yeah.
our growth forecast in the OP is 52 units per year, and this is 110. And keep in mind, an ADU, although, we can't dictate what size it is, it's still considered a dwelling unit and still working towards achieving that 1.5 million homes. So by saying we've grown by 110 households, that includes all different types. So it was a busy year, yeah.
So we have it broken down. Palmerston, again, this year was the big winner. In total, they've come out with 52 units, 17 ADU and 35 dwelling units. Harrison came in with 36. That's 33 dwelling units and 3 additional dwelling units. And the town of Minto came in with 19, and there's 16 new single-family dwellings around the town of Minto, as well as 3 rural additional dwelling units. And Clifford brings up the rear with 3 new units, 2 being ADU and 1 new single-family home this year. So, want to take this one on, Dave?
This is the big industrial project in Palmerston that's been going on for, I guess, over a year now almost. The Hammond Manufacturing Plant, it's almost 100,000 square feet. It's, the exterior is pretty much finished now. They're working on the interior, getting all the services put in. There's miles and miles of copper pipe for water, compressed air, natural gas. So a lot of interior work to do. Their expected completion date now is April. They want to be moved in by April and up and running. It's been a huge project. With the last time Wes and I were there, there was 17 Skyjacks running inside. With a tradesperson, at least one tradesperson in each one. So it's a busy, busy spot in there.
Well, there's not much new to update with Minto Ag. I imagine they're starting in the repair shop. They are nearing completion of everything. So all's going well there. The next one, so this came in late end of last year, and this will be the front elevation facing the highway, as well as there's the floor plan. This is for Moonfleet Poultry. It's a 4-bay repair garage with a wash bay and office as well. And then the next slide just shows you where we're at. We got a foundation out of the ground.
So this is where the former rat farm on Highway 9, just outside of Harriston, is located. So it's the pork producers building is being demolished, and this is what's kind of in the works for that property.
So for 2022 in agriculture, this has been a year, we've had a lot of new barns. We've had 2 22,000 square foot broiler barns, 9,000 square foot broiler barn addition. We have a new layer barn going up for W. Wepler Farms, 8,500 square feet, as well as 9,600 square feet of solid manure storage. We have a hog barn going up on White's Road. It's 22,000 square feet finishing barn. And then we had 2 robot dairies for over 50,000 square feet combined, with Roker Farms also putting in a manure tank, bunk silo, and a 6,400 square foot egg shed with
hay storage. And then our last one was Decker Dairy at the end of the year, put in a little dairy barn addition for sick cows. And the rest is just kind of pictures of our highlights. This is some chicken barns we've put up around. Some new single-family dwellings going up, a garage with a breezeway addition on the 7th line. That's our Palmerston Arena mechanical room, if anybody can make sense of all that. Beside it is a septic drain line, both ends of the pipe. And as always, yeah, that's right. And as always, my favorite concrete pump pictures. Now I'll turn it over to Ashley.
Thanks. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview because I see you guys a lot. So in 2022, we received 57 planning applications. This is up from 54 in 2021 and 16 in 2020. I would like to note when I was interviewed, Terry told me we did 20 a year total. So that was a little misleading. Our application types remain varied, but it is important to keep in mind that many planning applications span over multiple years. For instance, a subdivision typically takes 3 to 5, and it'll have multiple components to it. So when you see your pre-servicing agreements, your zoning, all of that. However, for 2022, our highest number of applications is consents with 20 and minor variances with 15. That being said, in 2022, I brought 66 reports before council. We do consolidate reports where we can to cut down on the number of reports you have to read. So the 66 reports did cover 74 planning items. So an example of this consolidation would be where you have a development agreement in conjunction with a consent or a subdivision with the associated zoning. And yeah, that's it for mine.
Questions? Go ahead.
Not a question, but just a comment. I find your reports well done, informative, concise, clear, and hats off to you because you guys have some challenges to deal with right now, and you seem to be doing a great job of staying on top of things. Good work.
We're doing a great job. I'm just like.
Well, whoever's doing what, it seems to be working well, and we recognize the work that's involved here. There's a lot to stay on top of. I'm not quite sure what the Ontario government's doing here, but we're happy with the work you guys are doing. At least I am.
Other questions? Can you tell us exactly what they're going to be doing in the Hammond building, other than electrical components? What is it they're doing?
Hammond Manufacturing are a large, they're a large, well, they're a Canadian firm, but they're multinational now. They have plants all over the world, but they build a lot of transformers, electrical panels, electrical process equipment for machinery and stuff. What they're going to be doing in town is building the cabinets for those. So they'll be bending them and then finishing with either spray paint or powder coating. That's just phase 1. There's plans for phase 2 off the back of the building as well.
And phase 1, I think we're looking 25 employees. Is that true?
That's my understanding.
That's nice.
Yeah. They're based in Guelph is where their
Yeah.
biggest plant is out in the Hanlon there.
So what are we
They've been around for a
expecting?
long time.
Sorry, Dave?
They've been around for a long time, so.
What are we expecting for 22 23 and 24? You got a crystal ball?
Oh, yeah. It's very foggy, but, well, actually, we've issued, I believe, 8 permits so far in January. We have 18 more applications sitting in the queue that are just waiting for their information in order to issue them. 10 of those applications are for housing, for the new subdivision across from Murphy's.
Mhm.
So it's going to start opening up, hopefully very soon. That's for Nora Homes from Guelph are doing majority of the building in there.
That's great.
And we've seen quite an interest in agricultural projects so far this year too. There seems to be a lot of interest from the farming community to do barns and additions and whatnot.
I
So
see
it looks
we-
like a busy year.
Good. That's good, because we don't want you to get bored. So I see we've named the streets in that subdivision. All the street names are on the MEX property. Dominant Bean and Thackeray, yeah, those two names are definitely Legion names. Names that are veterans, I'm sure. So that's a great report as usual, you guys. Thank you for that. Sorry, where are we here? Oh, moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, second by Councillor Dirksen, that the council receive report building 2023-001 regarding the 22 building department year in review as information. So all in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. And thank you, gentlemen. And Ashley, thank you for keeping these guys busy. And same to you, Ashley. Terry, you guys bring great information to council. And I mean, the more information that we get in these reports, it's good for us. So we can understand it, I think, and move ahead. So number 3 here is the first right of refusal. And Belinda, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Turton and members of council. This will be very brief. It's no surprise this is coming forward to you all. Jeremy Metzger, as you know, submitted a first right of refusal request. We discussed this. I created an agreement, first right of refusal. Jeremy signed that agreement, provided his $1,000 deposit, and away we go. He gets 3 months in that first right of refusal, so till April 30th. If another offer comes in during that time, then he has 30 days to respond. And if he chooses to go forward, then we move into our normal agreement of purchase and sale process. And if he doesn't, then we would go back to the person who offered after him. So that is what this is. Recommendation to have the mayor and clerk sign that first right of refusal agreement.
Questions? The $1,000 goes back to him if he changes his mind? Good, because that pays for a lot of time, some of our time. Has this happened before in Minto?
First right of refusals? Yes.
So in this particular way, somebody to hold on to a piece of land, I mean, I understand that if I purchase this piece of land and the one next to it, or whatever, that's the same thing as first right of refusal, but on an initial piece of land, has it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Last year, I believe, we had a first right of refusal, and then that first right of refusal expired, so nobody submitted an offer, and then they decided it didn't work out for them. So yes, we have done this before.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Moved by Councillor Zimmerman, seconded by Councillor Elliott. The Council of Town of Minto receives report Economic Development 2023-003 regarding the first right of refusal agreement 2609861 Ontario Limited, 460 Minto Road, Palmerston Industrial Park, and authorizes the mayor and the clerk to sign this agreement. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you very much. Volunteer dinner. Quinn Forder.
Yeah, so as Luke mentioned earlier, as things begin to go back to normal after the pandemic, we're seeing the return of events and initiatives. So we just wanted to bring back the opportunity for you guys to start your volunteer appreciation dinner that you have done previously. So in 2018 and 2019, it took place in Hairston and Palmerston. So this year it would move to Clifford. We've spoken to the staff in the Community Services Department. The only date available during Volunteer Week in April is Wednesday, April 19th. Typically it starts at 6:30, and in the past we have had between 200 and 225 volunteers in attendance. So just looking for a little bit of direction from you as to whether or not this is something you'd like to start up again, or if you had any ideas for the dinner itself.
Okay. Thoughts? Go ahead, Councillor Dirksen. Keeping in mind, one thing I'd like to point out before you start, that is the Wednesday of Good Roads.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
But that's, I don't see a serious issue. It depends on what we're feeding and how much we need to be involved. I know we need to be involved a lot, but that Good Roads usually on Wednesday is finished at noon. And so I guess as likely it's easier to plan some things than others.
So
In-
a simple menu would be probably a good thing to go with, maybe, if you wanted to have it this year.
Like pizza?
Well, maybe not that simple, but
Sorry.
I'm sure we
sorry.
can come up with something that works well for everybody.
So I think the key thing is to have it on volunteer week. So thoughts on the Wednesday? Gentlemen,
Fine with me. I won't be home till 4 now. Oh, just kidding.
talk to Elaine about that. Okay, no, so I'm going to read the motion. That moved by Councillor Potnovitz, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the Council of the Town of Minto receives CL 2023-002 regarding the Volunteer Appreciation Dinner for information and approves the dinner to be held in Clifford on Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. So that's the first step to plan the day. So all in favor of the day? That's carried unanimously. Second thing then, Annaline, how do you want us to designate a couple counselors to help you with the menu?
I think we'll probably send out some emails to you
Okay.
and we can go through
Perfect.
it. Yep,
So nothing needed from us? Okay.
not at this point, yes.
All right, thank you. So number 5 then is the CL 2023-003, the Integrity Commissioner. And Annaline, would you please, Clerk McRobb, would you please enlighten us on this?
Thank you, Mayor Turton. So on May 30th, 2017, received Royal Assent Bill 68, stating that you had to have one in place. So we did appoint one in 2019. We entered into an agreement with Guy Giorno, and the county and many of the other municipalities entered into an agreement with him as well. We have never had to use him at this point, and I feel that we could just update the agreement and do an extra 4 years at this point in time. There's been some slight changes in his fees, but really the cost of an integrity commissioner is going to be probably large no matter what and who you're using, depending on what they're being required for. So my suggestion is that we just continue on for an extra 4 years.
So moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Podnovitz, that the Council of the Town of Minto receives report CL 2023-003 regarding an Integrity Commissioner agreement and considers passage of the related bylaw in open session. Questions for Annaline? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion? Here's to not needing his service. So we'll need a motion to return to the regular council meeting, sorry.
Announcements at this point.
Oh, sorry, did I miss the announcements?
I think it probably is hidden away there.
Oh, I did miss them. Announcements. Which end do we start at? Councillor Elliott?
Sure. 81's hockey team, Minto 81s are opening their playoffs this weekend. On Tavistock on Saturday night for the first game, although they do have home game advantage because were ahead of Tavistock in the standings. And I believe they're back home in Palmerston Arena, 8 o'clock Sunday night. Then weekends after that, you'll just have to keep an update. But they have a really good season. There isn't anybody in the league that they haven't beat, including the first place team who only lost one game, and that was to Minto. So people out in TV land or here want to go enjoy a good hockey game and support our community. It's a great hockey game to watch, and my grandson plays for them, so that's why it's so good. Okay, that's all I have.
I have nothing, Mayor Turton.
Go ahead, Councillor Dirksen.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you, sir.
I have
Counselor,
nothing as well.
go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I don't really have anything other than to comment that several of us were down at Roma, and it's interesting the challenges that we're going to face this next term. I think we're all going to have our work cut out for us, but it sounds like every community is facing the same challenges. The larger centers, I think, are going to get hit harder as homelessness becomes a bigger and bigger issue and housing becomes an enormous issue across the board. So we have our work cut out for us, but we're hoping we can carry on with our great team and leadership and make the best of it that we can, because it's going to be challenging.
Thank you. So this Thursday at 6 PM, I think there's a bunch of us going to the AGM for the chamber. And also Sunday morning at 10 AM, February 5th, we're Bowl for Millions. And isn't that what it's called? So I think, Belinda, we've got a couple teams. So there's still room for one more person, and if everybody brought their money, why, there's room for more contributions. So,
We can just email those to you, right? E-transfer?
everybody has your email? Okay. Then motion by Councillor Dirksen, second by Councillor Zimmerman, that the Committee of the Whole convenes in regular council. All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. Notices of motions. Any notices? Okay, so moved by Councillor Zimmerman, seconded by Councillor Elliott, that the Council of the Town of Minto ratifies the motions made in the Committee of Whole. All in favor of that? Good, that's carried. Thank you. So, bylaws, moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, that bylaw 2022-107 be read a third time and passed in open council and sealed with the seal of the corporation. All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. So, Annaline, did I do that right?
You did. So that one was just a
Okay.
third reading for the municipal
Yes.
drain.
Yeah.
That's why it read a little bit different.
Okay. So the next one is the 2023-010 is the right of refusal for Jeremy Metzger, and 2023-011 is the integrity commissioner agreement, and that's moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. That bylaws 2023-010 and bylaw 2023-011 be read a first, second, third time, passed in open council and sealed with the seal of the corporation. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. Confirmatory bylaw is moved by Councillor Podovitz, seconded by Councillor Dirksen, that bylaw 2023-012 to confirm actions of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Minto respecting a meeting held January 31st, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time and passed in open council and sealed with the seal of the corporation. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. Adjournment. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Zimmerman. The Council of the Town of Minto adjourn a meeting to meet again at the call of the mayor. All in favor of that? Thank you. Thank you very much, you guys. It was